Hello and welcome to the Humans Invent Cycling Podcast. I'm Richard Moore and I'm with Lionel Burney. Hello Lionel.
Hello Richard.
Lionel, we're in an outside bar at St Pancras Station, but we're just off the Eurostar, having been in Paris.
Well, earlier we were in the Palais de Congrès, which is a sort of convention centre and auditorium in the Port Maillot area of Paris, sort of to the west of the city, isn't it? And it's traditionally where the route for the following year's Tour de France is unveiled, around about this time of year. And it was quite it's always a nice occasion, isn't it? It's always nice to recap the previous summer's tour and look forward to the new one.
Yes, indeed. We were somewhere quite nice last night as well, weren't we?
We were indeed, although the name of the restaurant we were in escapes me. It's lost in a little bit of a fog. But it was a sort of prologue for the Gourmet de France experience that we'll have next summer. Very nice smoked haddock starter, and followed by lamb chops. And I think you had the boar, didn't you?
I did have a bit of boar, but we don't want to bore people with that. So yeah, you obviously, when you see the route of the tour, you immediately start thinking about the culinary opportunities along the way.
I tweeted the Gourmet de France highlights, which are tea and scones in Yorkshire, and moule frites in Le Touquet, champagne in Epinay and Reims, as we have to call it in French, and of course cassoulet and Carcassonne before the traditional €10 beer on the Champs-Élysées.
Can't wait.
The Humans Invent Cycling Podcast. Interviews and analysis. We've got the big talking points covered.
Lots to look forward to. We heard from Christian Prudhomme, the tour director. He went through the 21 stages, starting, of course, in Yorkshire and taking in the Vosges Mountains, the Alps and the Pyrenees in terms of mountains. It's quite interesting that he made it and makes a big thing of the three mountain ranges. I think, as speaking to Daniel Friebe, who's our resident mountain expert earlier, Prudhomme is a fan of taking the race away from some of the traditional spots, and he does seem a big fan of the Vosges Mountains, and those stages in particular I think will be fascinating.
Well, the La Planche de Belleville was very sort of telegenic, wasn't it, in 2012 when Chris Froome won there. It's got that kind of, where they put the finish line is right on the point of the road, and so you get this image of the stage winner. I'm sure they've got this in mind, but when Chris Froome won, it was almost like he was rising out of the ground from the camera angle that they chose. And the Vosges do look very, very pretty. And Prudhomme, as we've talked in previous podcasts about his willingness to do away with successive very, very high mountains, he does seem a fan of the Moyenne Mountains, and there are a lot of sort of first category climbs. There is a lot of climbing, but it perhaps isn't necessarily a sort of
it's other than the obvious, Galibier, Alpe d'Huez, that kind of thing. And we talked a couple of weeks ago on the podcast about a tour that perhaps excluded all or category mountains. This is not that, but as I saw the route being unveiled, I did begin to think that stage, La Planche de Belleville especially, it's up and down, the huge mountains, but it's a day where there could be some real drama, some real excitement, I think, and opportunities for riders who aren't necessarily pure climbers but opportunists to have a go. Yeah,
I think Prudhomme subscribes to the view that a great, in inverted commas, route doesn't necessarily make a great race, and that it's a bit more subtle than that. You've got to give opportunity and encouragement to riders to think slightly differently. If you just have successive very hard mountain stages, then you don't necessarily get a particularly nuanced race in a lot of cases. So I think it's a well-balanced route. The inclusion of the cobbles is obviously something that's going to grab a lot of attention.
We'll talk about that later, I think, yeah.
But just to make a point that I feel fairly strongly about, the trend in recent years to leak the route and kind of the competition to kind of reveal
it's exactly called journalism, Lionel.
Yes, I understand that journalism is about finding things out and revealing them to the public prior to them wanting it to be known.
They don't want you to know.
But I find it akin to kind of rummaging through the cupboards on December the 1st in search of your Christmas present.
Not December the 24th. December the 1st. Is that when your family are early early purchasers.
They're very organised, clearly. But I think it's a shame because you go to the auditorium. I deliberately this year, because I didn't need to know, I deliberately didn't kind
Information
of look.
blackout.
Yeah, I a few things I already knew ahead of today, but. It was nice to watch the route slowly unfold in front of you. They do it quite effectively with that big map, the relief map, the 3D map of France, and the line moving around. And I think it's just a shame that we can't have a big reveal with the surprises actually being genuine surprises on the day.
Lionel, you used to draw up maps of imaginary Tours de France, didn't you? Was this the route that unveiled today? Was that one that ever featured in any of your imaginary maps?
I should point out this was when I was a child. I used to design my own Tour de France route.
Instead of rummaging through the cupboards in early December.
But I can confirm that I never was as audacious as having a Yorkshire start. The idea of the Tour de France starting in West Berlin, as it did in 1987, just seemed totally weird to me. I thought, and to go to Yorkshire, as Prudhomme pointed out, it's not until he said it that it really kind of registered, but it's the most northern start the Tour has ever had.
Interesting, because last year was the most southern start the Tour has ever had, and as he said, from one island to another. Yorkshire then.
Yorkshire's not an island.
No, Yorkshire's not yet an island. Although it was interesting when they showed them the map of Great Britain, they picked out Yorkshire in yellow as though it was the kind of independent state of Yorkshire.
I think that's how a lot of
Republic
people in Yorkshire would like to see it.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting because it's kind of being rebranded by I think certainly some powers that be at the Department of Culture, Media and Sport as an English Tour de France rather than a Yorkshire Tour de France. And I think we're going to see a bit of a power struggle over the coming months because the money is coming from the DCMS and it's Gary Verity of Welcome to Yorkshire who has the license effectively to hold the Tour de France, and he was quite bullish afterwards, saying, "Do I look like somebody who's going to be pushed around?" It was very much it's my show. And today Christian Prudhomme came on and introduced proceedings and paid homage to Yorkshire and gave us an Eric Cantona quote, which was as confusing as most Eric Cantona quotes. He then introduced...
The relevance of that was that he played for Leeds United.
The Cantona quote was about Leeds United. It was about Leeds, the city. He then introduced Gary Verity, who strode onto the stage, and they shared a man hug. They get on very well.
I think, as well.
Yeah, very unusual, unprecedented for a Yorkshireman, I think.
Possibly so, yeah.
And Gary Verity, who a couple of weeks ago was on the operating table having heart surgery and was advised by his doctors not to do anything stressful, then spoke to an auditorium of probably about 1,000 people in French, which he didn't speak until quite recently. And he did so very well. The hand gestures and everything. He came across as quite convincing Yorkshire Frenchman.
French with a Yorkshire accent is not something I've heard before, I have to say.
He was good. We're not mocking. Anyway, recently, or a while ago, I spoke to Christian Prudhomme about the decision to bring the Tour to Yorkshire, and here is what he said. What was it about Yorkshire that appealed to you? What was it about their bid that...
Everything. I knew Yorkshire was very nice, but I didn't know it was gorgeous. What is very important when you have a start and grand départ of the tour is obviously beautiful scenery and different kinds of roads in order to have a flat stage and a hilly stage. And it's more than we dreamt. I knew that we'll have a grand départ in Yorkshire. But I didn't know, for example, 1 year and a half, if it would be 14 or after. Because at the beginning, we talked about 16, 18, and I thought about 17. But after Bradley Wiggins's win in Paris-Nice, after Bradley Wiggins's win in the Dauphiné, after Bradley Wiggins's in the Tour and first British winner of the Tour, and the huge success of the Olympic Games in London, and in these Olympic Games, the hugest success was cycling. He said it must be in Yorkshire as soon as possible. So it was 14.
there was obviously the bid from Scotland as well. Was that was that a close contest?
Yes, it was a close contest. I hope they will be still
I think they're
wanting
still
the tour.
Yeah.
And we had a lunch a few months ago.
Yeah.
But it was too long. In the history of the Tour, it's only 3 days abroad. That doesn't mean it will be always 3 days. But with Yorkshire, it was 3 days and then in London. It was 4 days, and after stage 4, it was very, very long to go to France.
Yeah.
And our problem is when we are in Massif Central, in the Pyrenees, in the south of the Alps, it's after the stage, it's very long for the riders with the buses to go to the hotels.
Yeah.
So if at the very beginning of the Tour, it's already very complicated, that means we will have a problem on the second week or third week. So that's the reason why. But for example, Edinburgh is a magnificent city. Edinburgh, you can do something marvelous. So if we have an English-speaking winner of the Tour every year, I think we'll have new opportunities to do something, and perhaps to start from Scotland and to go through Yorkshire to France. But Edinburgh is
a beautiful city.
Very, very, very.
I think they shouldn't have come up with a plan to come all the way down through England.
For us, obviously, it's not like the Olympic Games. You can do almost the same Olympic Games anywhere in the world. Depending on the start of the Tour, it's not the same Tour. We have a problem after. For example, if it's 4 days in the United Kingdom, it's almost impossible for us to have the first mountain stage during the after 8 stages. And we need that. You can say 1 year out of 5, it's not the first weekend, it's 10 days after, but it's very, very complicated.
One of the features of your tours has been that a prologue doesn't feature every year. There's not one this year or next year. Is that because of do you feel the TV audience?
I don't like when it's always the same thing, even if the bid comes from a city, from a region, from a department in France. If it's a city, obviously you have a prologue, because the mayor of the city wants the riders to contain it. But if it's for tourism, and if it's bigger than a city, it's better for the people who do the bid to have a longer stage, and it's better for us not to have always the same thing. For example, from 1967 till 2007, for 40 years, it was always a time trial the first day. But we had a start in Brittany in 2008. We decided to do something else, and at that time I asked the president of the region, Jean-Yves Le Drian, who is now the French defense minister, and I asked him, what do you want? 8 kilometer long prologue or 180 kilometers in Brittany? He said 180 kilometers, obviously. And it was the same in Vendée, because in Vendée the agreement is not with the city, it's with the département. So it's better. The Grand Départ in Vendée with the Le Goua, you know, this road across the sea. Causeway. So it's wonderful. But it's impossible to do that with a prologue or something. It would be funny.
It would be funny across the passage.
For the first and the last riders, it was already so difficult to choose in Yorkshire because Scarborough is magnificent. When you go to Scarborough, when I saw Scarborough, I was sure we will do a stage. And there is no stage because it was difficult. But it's very, very nice, Scarborough, and the coast is very, very nice.
Nice for Mark Cavendish.
It will be nice for Mark Cavendish in Harrogate too. Yes.
You're listening to the Humans Invent Cycling Podcast, powered by Sharp.
Richard, run me through your 3 highlights from the 2014 Tour de France route.
Lionel, you've got me there. Well, I think stage 2 from York to Sheffield is one that there were gasps in the auditorium. That's maybe a slight exaggeration, but certainly the profile of that took some people by surprise, including Chris Froome, who we'll hear from in a moment or two. It's harder than I think people had imagined. The Côte de Home Moss, the Côte de Bradford. Christian Prudhomme compared the roads to Liège-Bastogne-Liège. The climbs are hard. They are grippy roads, as we know in Great Britain, and narrow in places as well. So that could be a tough stage, a bit of a sort out. It certainly won't be straightforward. Froome had imagined that the 3 stages in Britain were going to be kind of flattish sprinter stages. So obviously not being that well briefed, or maybe just not thinking that far ahead yet. That's one that will be interesting, I think. That'll be a good stage. And then the cobbles, of course, the pavé on stage 5 when we're in Belgium. Very Paris-Roubaix-esque, a little bit tougher than the similar stage that featured in 2010, where there was that brilliant Lance Armstrong quote at the end of it, where he had a bit of a hard time and he reflected at the end, sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail. And 2004 he'd been the hammer. Iban Mayo was effectively put out. And you always expect a skinny climber to come unstuck in the cobbles. 2010 it was Frank Schleck. Ironically, the winner of the Tour that year was Andy Schleck, not somebody who you would have imagined being able to cope at all with the cobbles, but he coped really well that day with
they had a plan.
He was in the jet stream of Cancellara.
That's right, yeah.
They had a plan for Frank Schleck to throw himself off and cause that split.
I'm not sure that was part of the plan, but they certainly had this plan for Fabian Cancellara, a master of the cobbles, to basically guide the Schleck brothers through. And obviously Frank didn't make it, but Andy did. And of course, Geraint Thomas was up there in that.
Geraint Thomas was second on that stage, wasn't he, behind Thor Hushoff? I mean, that, on reflection, so far, that's probably one of Geraint Thomas's best ever road performances, I think. Hasn't really built on that yet. Maybe next year, he'll look at that stage as one that he should potentially do pretty well in.
Well, he's going to be key, isn't he? Because, imagining that Chris Froome will be the Sky leader, you could imagine Geraint Thomas doing for Froome a similar sort of job that Cancellara did for Schleck.
Yeah, and then the other stage I thought I'd highlight was stage 17, Saint-Gaudens to Pladadé. 125 kilometres, 40 of those kilometres are climbing, and I think all 40 possibly come in the final 100. So it's short and intense, and it's the kind of stage that Christian Prudhomme does seem to love. And what year was it? 2011. We had that thrilling and similarly short stage to Alpe d'Huez, which was, I think Contador was on the attack right from the word go, and that was one of the greatest stages of recent times. Pierre Rolland was the winner at Alpe d'Huez. 4 classified climbs, and I think that will be an exciting stage. That's the pick for me. What about you, Lionel? Are there any?
Funnily enough, you picked the 3 that I would have chosen as well. So instead, I will say the opening stage from Leeds to Harrogate gives Mark Cavendish an opportunity to potentially win and take the yellow jersey for the first time in his career, which, when you're looking at this from a sort of what are the stories of the Tour going to be, that would be pretty amazing, really, because he's yet to wear the yellow jersey, and for a rider who's won all those stages, Prudhomme's kind of other thing about the Tour is that it's not just about the races, but it's about building a sort of almost a lexicon of history, isn't it? And I think it would be remiss if Cavendish went through his whole career without pulling on the yellow jersey. And we've talked before about that being more difficult because of the lack of time bonuses on the early stages these days. So this is a very real opportunity. As we know, Prudhomme not a big fan of the prologue, not a big fan of time trialling, it seems.
We've not mentioned only one time trial this year.
I think that's good. I would love to see a Tour without any time trial. I think that would be just once. While it is a facet of stage racing and an important one, a very important one, it would be interesting to see how a Tour evolved with none of the riders able to sort of fall back on and plan for a time trial performance to either.
And then you could have one that was just time trials.
That would be excellent. So my second highlight then will be the brutal stage from Carcassonne to Bagnères de Luchon, 237 kilometres going over some pretty nasty climbs. There's the Porte d'Aspet, the Porte Palais. It's just a long way late in the race,
and I think it's the only mountain stage that doesn't finish with a summit finish. And our good friend Daniel's a great fan of these stages. It finishes down in Luchon, where Robert Miller won a stage in 1983, his first stage of the Tour de France.
Yeah. And my third, I haven't done mine in chronological order, unfortunately. My third highlight, I think it's the stage 2 from Comblain to Gerardmer, isn't it? Which has got the little 1.8 kilometre wall at the end. I think 10%.
This sounds interesting. Yeah, 15% in places, I think.
Possibly, yeah. And I think that will be, that will be a real kind of. It'll be the first opportunity to see who's going well. It's that traditional point of the race, that second Saturday when everyone kind of, I think, mentally kind of relaxes a little bit, having survived what could be a pretty hectic opening week.
Actually, I might be wrong with that 15%. The Col de Chevrier has bits that are 15%. On the day to Planche des Belles Filles. Neither of us have picked that one out, but that's definitely one we mentioned earlier, which will be is one that Daniel is certainly looking forward to. The Petit Ballon is a very hard claim as well.
Yeah. And of course, my other highlight is the culinary experience, the trip round France.
Bien sûr.
Yeah, the tea and scones in Yorkshire, moules frites in Le Touquet. There's obviously there's champagne in Epernay. And cassoulet and Carcassonne, followed by the
fish and chips in Yorkshire.
Tea and scones, I think, in Yorkshire. No,
Harrogate might be good fish and chips. No?
Yeah, possibly, yeah. But we'll be staying miles from Yorkshire because every hotel room is already booked.
Somebody who will not be gorging his way around France is Chris Froome, I imagine.
I imagine he will be, but he will also be burning off an awful lot of the food
more than
he's
us.
Gorging.
Yeah. Chris Froome, so spoke to him afterwards, got his reactions, defending champion of course, and here he is in the Palais des Congrès.
Nous terminons avec celui qui a ramené le maillot jaune sur les Champs-Élysées, le vainqueur du Tour, Christian Prudhomme.
Chris, happy memories, La Planche des Belles Filles, especially from last year, your first stage win. What do you remember of that climb?
Definitely special memories there. It was. It's funny because it was the first hilltop finish of last year's tour, and it's going to be the first proper hilltop finish of next year's tour too. So that's, I think, for the GC riders, it's always going to represent the first real battle, and somewhere where definitely I have earmarked to look at that's where I look at the real race starting.
What about the cobbles as well? How do you feel about that stage?
Well, yeah, that's certainly going to be interesting. It's something we're not used to, getting ready for a typical Tour de France, so it's something we're going to have to train specifically for. Get out there, see the cobbles, ride the cobbles. It's not something I've done a lot of. But
you've ridden Paris-Roubaix before, haven't you?
I've ridden Roubaix. Yeah. I didn't finish, but that was when I was a Neo Pro, and I wouldn't say I dislike the cobbles. It's definitely it's a risk, more of a risk having cobbles in. Anything can go wrong on the cobbles: crashes, punctures, mechanicals. But that's just another challenge for us, and I'm sure the performance team are going to look at that and see how we can minimise those risks. If you look at the time trial that we do have in next year's Tour de France, it's over 50 kilometers long, predominantly flat and false flats. If we look at the time gaps that were in the 35 kilometer flat time trial in this year's tour, you can only imagine what the time gaps would be in a 54 kilometer time trial, because it will keep the race, I think, relatively close. I speak in relative terms. Obviously we've got a lot of mountains before then, but I think it's quite a fitting way to end the tour with. I think a tour always needs to be well balanced to be able to test sort of every aspect of the ride, and I think with the cobbles in there next year, that adds another element of that. 5 summit finishes, so whoever wins next year's tour is going to have to be able to climb with the best, and then a 54 kilometer time trial. In comparison to the other GC riders, I'm happy with a 50k time trial at the end. Definitely, I'd heard rumours of the cobbles, so that wasn't a surprise. But I think that was a bit of the unknown factor. We might have to put a mechanic standing every 100 meters with spare wheels. But something else that really stood out to me that hadn't really registered home before was the stage 2 up around Sheffield and around that area. I think. I'd thought of the first 3 days being flat and controlled by sprinters, but stage 2 really does look tough, and those roads.
Prudhomme called it Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Yeah, that's that jumped out at me.
Will you go there and recce those roads, do you think?
I think that would be wise to do. I'm sure we'll find time for it.
Are there any stages in particular that stand out for you as being possibly particularly important, the Pyrenees or the Alps? I mean, there's 3 mountain ranges next year, but is there one that stands out?
I wouldn't say there's one that stands out more than the others. I mean, all 5 of those mountaintop finishes are going to be days that really do sort out the general classification, and I think the first one, especially La Planche de Péfi, I think we can expect bigger time gaps there than we saw last year because of the amount of climbing before the final climb. I wouldn't say just a battle of pure climbers. Pure climbers will certainly be up there with that amount of climbing, but the pure climbers have got to get over the cobblestones. They've got to battle through any crosswinds that we have on the way to the mountains, and they've also got to be able to time trial at the end of it. So it's a pretty well balanced tour, I think. Things have definitely changed for me. My time at home just seems to be taken up answering emails and phone calls the whole day, but no, it's all good. There are changes I'm adapting to, and it's certainly different after having won the tour. But it doesn't make me any less hungry not to go back again. And
how's the back, which bothered you after the World? Are you fit again?
It's definitely settled down since I've been off the bike. I have been getting treatment for that, and hopefully that's not going to be a problem starting again next year.
I mean, you said motivation was an issue at the Worlds, but do you feel at the moment, as hungry as ever to try and defend your title next year?
Definitely. I'm getting really excited actually about the challenge. It's going to be a fun one to go for.
The Cycling Podcast with humansinvent.com. Innovation, craftsmanship and design.
Okay, Lionel, listen, before we carry on talking about next year's tour, let's return briefly to our competition, which is going to run for at least another week because nobody guessed the mystery voice. We had some good guesses: Jan Bakelants, Tom Steels, Jans Verada, Brian Holm, Frank Vandenbroek, Ryder Hesjedal. That was somebody thinking the mystery rider. They thought it was a play on words. It wasn't. It wasn't Ryder Hesjedal. Not Johan Museeuw, not Abdi Japarov, not Michael Bogart, not Brian Holm, not Konishev or Ekimov. So it's somebody else. We're going to play a little bit more this time. We're going to maybe give a little bit of a clue as well. What can we offer as a clue? It's Dutch.
That's not correct, is it? I don't actually know who it is. I could actually play along and try and win the ever-escalating prize.
Right.
Which is, at the moment...
The moment, the prize is Mountain Higher, Daniel's brilliant new book with mountains in it and beautiful photography and great words. And also we're going to throw in a calendar, the new calendar that's being produced by Laura Fletcher, raising money for the Women's Tour of Britain next year. And it features 12 scantily clad professional male cyclists. We had a little sneak preview of that yesterday, and I think we both really, really liked it, didn't we, Lionel?
I haven't yet recovered from the from the spectacle. How else can I describe it?
The Adam Hansen picture is extraordinary and well worthy of December.
Adam Hansen, Mr. December. I mean,
he really pushed the boat out with that one. Thomas Decker's good effort. Filippo Pozzato had to be there, yeah. and he is there.
Yeah, Pozzato, I think his pose, that's just how he kind of lounges around normally. I'm
not sure he even agreed to take part in the I think they sneaked up on him.
Yeah, I think so. Some of the others don't look quite so confident and comfortable in their various states of undress.
No, they don't.
But Pozzato looks like this was what he was born to do.
Well, it certainly probably is. He wasn't born to win the Tour of Flanders, evidently. Now, have a guess, and I'll answer a question before we play the mystery voice.
Okay. It's a professional cyclist.
Yes.
Is it a current rider?
It is actually a current rider, but nearing the end of his career, I suspect.
Okay. I honestly, I don't want to spoil it for people. No, I want people to use their own judgment.
Quite a cult character, I would say. Certainly not somebody who would spring immediately to mind. Somebody guessed Johnny Hoogerland as well. It's not him.
Well, that's good. That certainly narrows it down a bit.
Yeah. So let's hear this mystery voice. Here it is. So that was our mystery voice. He is Dutch, we can confirm, having conferred with Lionel. Tweet your answer, hashtag mystery voice. Hashtag mystery voice. If you tweet it, to Humans Invent, at Humans Invent, hashtag mystery voice. And the prize will be added to again next week if nobody gets it. And we'll just go on forever, I think, with that. Anyway, we'll offer ever more obvious clues.
The Humans Invent Cycling Podcast. For more articles, go to humansinvent.com/cycling.
Now, Lionel, anybody else you spoke to in the Palais des Congrès today at the unveiling of the route for the Tour de France?
Yeah, well, I spoke to Dave Brailsford, who was he was there looking very dapper.
Last man to leave.
He was the last man to leave, yeah. And he seemed very relaxed. He seemed like he had, he had sort of things in quite a sort of healthy perspective at the moment. He was chatting away, and it was obvious. The obvious thing was to ask him what he thought of the Tour route, what his first impressions are, because, of course, they're well known at Sky for breaking down the route into its constituent parts and analysing where the danger lie and where the opportunities lie. And that process will pretty much start immediately. They will look at that route and they will prepare accordingly. And obviously the goal is to try and win it again. Having won it with Bradley Wiggins in 2012, Chris Froome this year, it would look to me that Chris Froome is the most likely leader for the Tour team. I don't think there's any likelihood of Bradley Wiggins coming back onto the scene. It was interesting.
Although Brailsford did say that any British rider of the team will want to ride. Bradley Wiggins will, you would think, want to ride it, won't he?
Yeah, and Rod Ellingworth has been saying in recent days, hasn't he, that there could be a place in the Tour team for Wiggins. As we've said many times, if he commits to the plan, whatever the plan is, then he's a huge asset to the team.
Especially on that cobbled stage as well, actually.
The cobbled stage particularly, and he could be a real help for Chris Froome. What I mean is I can't see him coming back to be a factor in terms of a potential leader for the Sky team. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because with Richie Porte going for the Giro, we suspect whether he will be at the top of his game in July to be able to help Froome that's debatable, isn't it, I think. So here he is, Dave Brailsford. We're in Paris, Dave, and it's the obvious question, but you've seen the Tour de France route this morning. What are your first impressions?
Well, the standout thing is, of course, that it's starting in Britain, and you can't really look beyond that. I think, we all remember the last time the Tour came to Britain, it was a great success, but I think where we were as a cycling nation at that time is different from where we are now. And when you think about, not just from a performance point of view, but a participation point of view, the sportives, where the sport is at in Britain at the moment, to have the Tour de France come and start in our country, if we can't capitalise on that and enjoy it, but make the most of it, then we really need to look at ourselves. So I think that's the thing that I'm struggling to get beyond at the minute. It's that opportunity for everybody to embrace, and rather than, as we like to do as Britons, point out at each other and point fingers at one another in groups or little silos as we do. It really is a time to come together and let's try and get more people cycling. Let's look at road safety issues. Let's look at a whole spectrum of what it's going to take for everybody to enjoy the sport more and use this as a catalyst for it. So, exciting times.
You could argue that when the Tour came to London in 2007, that was what planted the seed really for Team Sky. And now here we are, we'll be 7 years later with back-to-back Tour champions from Team Sky.
Yeah, incredible.
It's going to be quite incredible going back to London. I'm assuming the crowds will be enormous again.
Yeah.
But you say you can't look beyond that. Perhaps that's because there's the cobbles on the middle of the first week.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't say that. I think
it was a nervy day in 2010, and just on paper that looks
it's a standout stage, isn't it? It does look harder, and I think the first week of the Tour de France, particularly the Tour de France, is nervous, and it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy really, because there's no real gaps on GC, so everybody's still everybody's in the mix, everybody's relatively fresh. and because it's nervous, it makes it even more nervous, as it were. But to add a cobble section into the mix there before there'll be any real gaps in GC will make it an interesting day for sure. I think the challenge. I mean, it's the same for everybody. That's one thing. So that's it's up to us to get ready for that challenge and be the best prepared team for that day. That's obvious. But I think the thing which will worry people is the elements of uncontrollable factors that will be increased because if you puncture at the wrong place and you can't get a team car there quickly, the crashes and the amount of crashes will go up. We all remember Schleck, going around the corner, camera pan round, there he was on the floor last time, but also we remember Geraint's fantastic ride in the white jersey. So I think you've got to look at it with a kind of an eye of it's an opportunity rather than it's a threat. Because I think if we go in thinking, we're worried about this, we don't want to lose time, this is a threat, and try and be on the defensive, I think you get yourself in real trouble on stages like that.
Chris Froome has ridden Paris-Roubaix. I've seen a picture of him, I think, on Arenberg, so he made it that far riding for Barlow World.
He has, and he's also, don't forget, ridden I'm damn sure he rode the Commonwealth Games in 2006 in Melbourne. I'm pretty sure he rode the mountain bike race. So, he's an elite level mountain biker, so his bike handling skills I don't think will be an issue. I think it's more about the nervousness of the race and somebody crashing in front of him, for example. It's all of those uncontrollables, isn't it?
And then the mountains, we've got the 3 ranges this year. Obviously, La Planche de Belleville means a lot to particularly to Chris and to Team Sky.
Yes, it does.
And then the Alps look hard, but the Pyrenees probably the harder of the ranges.
I think you're right. I think it does seem like the degree of challenge in the mountains increases through the race. But I think just listen. We've only just seen this, so it's very much off the top of my head kind of comments, and we'll take this away and analyse it thoroughly, and then we'll decide what our best way of trying to win it will be, and then we'll decide, on how to get ready for that. But it does seem to me that because the time trial is so late in the race, that there's an opportunity for the opportunists, if you like. So, a crosswind day, you might get a minute and a half, as we saw with Contador this year, or a day where, one of the up and downs, the early kind of hillier stages can be really, really tough, hard days, and you could get you can get some time there. So it may be that it's a very much more open and attacking race for those who don't fancy the chances in the time trial at the end.
The Humans Invent Cycling podcast. Interviews and analysis. We've got the big talking points covered.
So that was Dave Brailsford, Lionel speaking to Dave Brailsford. I spoke to Dave just after you, Lionel, and we asked him about the difficulties of backing up. We saw this year how Bradley Wiggins struggled to maintain that intensity that he had in 2012, and whether Froome will have similar issues. And Brailsford, he did, he acknowledged the possibility of that in quite an open way, and said it is tricky to adjust and adapt to a new life and new pressures. It was interesting. Froome last year at that presentation, he'd been finished runner-up at the Tour, but really he was just another rider. And when he afterwards, there was an awful fuss made of Bradley Wiggins and Mark Cavendish, and Froome was kind of left to his own devices. And very, very different this year. He was the centre of attention, really. Contador still, though. I mean, it's interesting as the riders are introduced, isn't it? Just the reception that each gets. I would say that Mark Cavendish is probably the most popular rider on the old clapometer.
Yes, he certainly was. Yeah, it's interesting you say about Froome there, because
I should say that there are people there other than just journalists. It's a kind of it's open to school kids as well, or some school kids as well.
There's a lot of people who work on the tour, and obviously all of the towns that are hosting a stage will be represented there. They sit in the middle on the the seats reserved to them. The press are kind of over to one side, and then I think there were school kids in there, and les jeunes reporters were in there, the young journalists that the Tour de France always have milling around in the press room. The thing about Froome, though, is I think he looks like a man who does want to try and win the Tour de France again. If you think back to last year, Bradley Wiggins was a defending champion. The Tour was in a very celebratory mood, about to or having unveiled the route for the 100th edition. And Wiggins wasn't really on message. He was already talking about trying to win the Giro, wasn't he? On the day of the Tour launch. And it was a bit like turning up at somebody's birthday party and then telling the host that you'd rather be somewhere else. And Chris Froome today didn't have an awful lot to do. He's very unassuming still, isn't he? He doesn't walk on with the kind of as if he's been imbued with some kind of massive confidence and personality transformation. I think he's still hungry and has all the manner of a man who wants to try and win the Tour again.
Yeah, I think, as he admitted, the World Championship wasn't perhaps the goal that he had hoped it would be for him, and didn't bring the most out of him. But yeah, you only have, as you said earlier, you only have to sit in that hall and watch the footage from this year and watch the route being unveiled for next year to feel pretty enthused by it. And you know, for riders who are there, I'm sure that does make a difference. Marcel Kittel was there as well. Reasonable cheer for him. But Cavendish was still the top dog as far as the sprinters were concerned, according to the crowd there. Anything else to add from our little fine visit to Paris, Lionel, or shall we wrap it up there?
Well, I think it's October, mid-October now, and the Tour is many months away. But it's amazing how sort of almost relentless professional cycling is when you think about it. I mean, it's only a matter of weeks ago, really, that we were on the Champs-Élysées and the Tour had ended, and you know, I'm pretty excited about next year's race from the point of view of the cobbled stage is going to absolutely, it's just going to dominate everybody's thoughts in that first week, and it is going to be one of those ones that you just can't take your eyes off. And
it'll be electrifying.
Yeah, I think there's been debate. I don't know what your view is, but there's always been debate about whether the cobbles belong in the Tour de France. But my point of view is those roads are in France. It's a Tour de France. They don't do it every year, and I think it's absolutely fair game.
I mean, they didn't do it for a long time. There was a brutal cobble stage in 1980 that Bernardino won in the rain, and they didn't appear for a long time after that, did they?
I think the next time back was 2004.
2004.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and then Iban
because
Mayo,
I believe they were also in the tour in 1979, possibly. So there were and there, in fact that year 1980 there were cobble sections on 2 days. So yeah, there was a huge absence. But again, it's something that Christian Prudhomme seems to like, and I totally agree with you. I think it's a different type of challenge, a different kind of stage. You know, we saw this year with the crosswind stage, how, you know, different features, different characteristics inspire a different kind of racing, obviously, and it's great to bring that variety to the tour, so that it doesn't become formulaic. You know, what you don't want is for the flat stages to all end in sprints and the mountain stages to all end with a climber winning at the top of the mountain. You want to see something different, and that's what I think Prudhomme is bringing to the Tour. And I think the stages in Yorkshire and indeed in England, because there's a third one from Cambridge to London, we know they will be fantastic in terms of crowd support and so on. And there's a real opportunity there once again to showcase cycling in Great Britain.
It will be very surreal in Yorkshire, though, won't it? I mean, we've been to many foreign Grand Depart, not just for the Tour but also for the Giro, and I think that the most sort of alien one that I've been to was probably the Giro in Amsterdam, and Amsterdam turned itself pink for the weekend, and it was a fantastic occasion, but it didn't feel particularly like the Giro d'Italia. And I wonder, you know, whether, I mean, the Tour de France is the Tour de France, as our friend Daniel. He'll be having kittens at me using the cliche. But
if he's listening,
yeah. But I'm sure he's listening. But the Yorkshire really is it's pushing the boat out even further than.
Careful, Lionel, what you say about Yorkshire. They're proud people.
I'm not having a go at Yorkshire. I'm saying.
No. I think, but there are certain trappings that the Tour brings, such as the Garde Républicaine, that, you know, the police, and there are certain, you know, even the signage, the way the finish is laid out, etc., etc. There are certain things that the Tour, the entourage, the infrastructure that the Tour brings with it, give it an unmistakable Tour de France feel in perhaps a way that the Giro isn't perhaps on the same level.
That's true. And I have to say, the little video that they did selling Yorkshire to to the crowd in the presentation was, that really was good. I mean,
And do you know who the cyclist was that featured in it?
yes, his name escapes me. Frame builder.
His name sadly escapes me as well, but he's a very renowned frame builder.
Yeah, and we now feel daft that we can't remember.
But
his
I
name.
think we've got to own up to our little blind spots,
Yeah.
Lionel. There's no shame in that. Someone on Twitter will be going crazy.
They will. They will.
Feather
Yes, the frame
Feather
builder.
frames.
Feather.
Yeah. His first name is
His
Steve.
first name is.
Steve Feather.
On that note,
On that note, let's wrap it up. We're gonna a full apology to Tim or Steve Feather, or whatever his name is, in next week's podcast. We'll be back next week with Daniel. But thank you very much for listening to tonight's podcast, Lionel. Thank you very much.
thank you, Richard.
The Cycling Podcast with humansinvent.com. Innovation, craftsmanship and design.